Arthurian Legends releases October 4th, and I can't wait to draft it. I can't wait to play it in sealed. I can't wait to brew decks around it. Today we're going to talk about the spoilers, and we're going to categorize them into their usefulness or their efficiency in constructed versus limited. Let's get into it. So the first card that we're going to look at is Excalibur. Now Excalibur costs 2 mana, and it says it's a unique weapon. And it says bearer has +1 power for each of their elements. If they have all 4, they are also immune to damage. So this already I can see can be an extremely powerful card in our Arthurian Legends, because we already know that some of the minions are going to have multiple thresholds in their casting requirement, and one or more may have all 4 thresholds, which make them immune to damage. So definitely in constructed, we're going to see this in the Knights deck, if there is a Knights deck. Probably not in a whole lot of other decks outside of the Knights deck. And I would say in limited, it's probably just not going to be that consistent, because we most likely won't see that many ordinary Knights with multiple threshold requirements. And ordinary is very important in limited. When you're in limited, the majority of the cards that you see are going to be ordinary. So I'm going to slot this right into strictly constructed. I don't think we'll see it much in limited at all. And just a quick note about limited. For Arthurian Legends, we will not be given sorcerers for free anymore. Now we are going to be given the Spellslinger avatar. And Spellslinger, we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Spellslinger, all it does is give you +1 spell for the game. So it's not going to be as easy to cycle through your deck to get all the cards you need. So something like Excalibur, definitely, just if you only have a couple of Knights in your deck, you probably will just see this when you don't want to see it, or you'll have the Knights and not the sword. So it's just not really good in limited. So moving on to Just a Rock. Just a Rock costs 1 mana. It is an ordinary relic, may be cast into the hands of any unit already carrying an artifact to banish that artifact. That's very interesting. It banishes the artifact it replaces. It's only 1 mana. There's a lot of buzz around this card. I don't think it's going to be as playable as a lot of people think. The problem is that the relic that it replaces has to be carried by a unit. And so it can't hit monuments. It can't hit the round table that we'll be discussing later. It won't hit a devil's egg that's been dropped onto your site, or an angel's egg that's been dropped on your opponent's site. So I would rather honestly just play with Dispel or Disenchant. That way I can still hit the auras like Thunderstorm, Wildfire, and Tingle Terrain. That's very important. And I'd like to be able to hit monuments too. So Just a Rock, it's definitely going to see some play when the set comes out, but I think over time we're going to see that wane. And I would say in limited, it has no uses whatsoever. You're probably not going to need this in limited, unless for some reason there are just a million artifacts, weapons, and armors that people are using in limited all the time that show up in the ordinary slot. Just a Rock is probably just going to be strictly constructed. So the next artifact here is not a card, it's a Lance token. I just wanted to discuss this real quick because it says bearer's next strike deals +1 damage and strikes first, then the lance breaks. So this is a really cool addition to the game. In Arthurian Legends, some minions will enter the realm with a lance, and then they could pass that lance off to another minion. So this is kind of cool, giving something first strike +1 power. I'm excited about this card. I hope it doesn't end up gumming up the board where you just have lances everywhere, all these little tokens everywhere. I think that in constructed, whether we see this a lot in constructed really depends on the minions that use the lance, that come in with a lance. Like, are they powerful enough? Definitely in the Knights deck, we're probably going to see a lot of lance tokens. But I would venture to guess that we'll see more of this in limited. I think that we'll probably see a lot of ordinary cards that come in with lances, exceptional cards. So I'm going to put that in mostly limited for now, but we'll probably see it in constructed as well quite often. Moving on to Love Potion. Love Potion is 6 mana. It's an elite potion of blind devotion. Bearer has sacrificed Love Potion, gain control of target enemy minion here until this unit leaves the realm. So I think the best use for this is to place it on an avatar Get your avatar into a location where there's an enemy minion, sacrifice love potion, then take control of that minion. Obviously, your avatar will never leave the realm, so you'll always have control of the minion. I am not so psyched about this for constructed. 6 mana is a steep price. What are you playing this? What deck are you playing this in? Battle Mage doesn't want it. 6 mana is so high. Maybe Pathfinder. I could see it in a Pathfinder deck. I think it's very niche. Now, in Limited, on the other hand, it is a bomb, especially in a format where sorcerers are not everywhere. Having a swinging card like this that gives you a minion, takes a minion away from your opponent, very, very good. I would first pick this card out of a pack any day of the week. So we're going to put this in mostly limited. I almost want to put it in strictly limited. I think some people do want to try it in constructed. 6 mana is a lot, though. I'm gonna have to see what happens with this one in constructed before I jump on that bandwagon. Moving on to the Round Table. 3 mana. It is a unique monument, so can't be hit with just a rock. It must be cast to your back row. Whenever you summon King Arthur or a knight, sir, or dame to the round table, draw a card. So this could really create a snowball effect in constructed. I see there being most likely a knight's deck. You draw a knight, you play a knight, you draw a card. Oh, it's another knight. You play that, you draw another knight. And you just keep going, drawing cards, playing knights. Really cool. I hate that it has to be on your back row. That means you have to play all of your units defensively, if you're playing a ton of knights out and you really want to be aggressive, you don't want to give your opponent another turn to respond to this onslaught. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. I do like it. I love it in the Knights deck, but it also has that severe downside. In Limited, I don't see this being useful at all. It's just you're just not going to see enough Knights most likely in Limited. Again, it could be proven wrong. There could be multiple ordinary Knights. I doubt it. Even if there are multiple exceptional Knights, you're just not going to see them as often, and a lot of people are going to pick them when they open them in their packs. So we're going to say this is strictly constructed. So moving on to avatars. So we have our very first avatar here. This is the Spellslinger. We already spoke about it briefly before. You start with 4 spells in hand, and that's it. You can tap the player, draw a sight with it. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. A lot of people are excited about this in Limited because it means that now the other avatars that you open in your packs are actually attractive. They're useful. They're better than just starting with an extra spell usually. So that's really cool. That's the upside of Spellslinger. The downside is if you don't get an avatar in your pack, you're stuck with Spellslinger. Spellslinger doesn't do anything. He's most likely going to lose to Sorcerer every time, to a lot of avatars. You have to be very careful when crafting your deck, whether it's sealed or draft. You probably just need to focus on being extremely aggressive, getting under your opponent, making sure that you finish the game out quickly before your opponent can take advantage of their special avatar, if your opponent happened to draw an avatar in their sealed pool or pick it out of a draft pack. This is strictly Limited because we will not see this played at all in constructed. It's just not good enough. Next avatar we have here is Witch. Both Witch and Spellslinger start with 20 life, and they have 1 power. So Witch says tap, player, draw a sight. Tap, curse target avatar. So that's interesting. Curse. We haven't seen that word used before. I don't think it's a keyword. I think this is just a flavorful word. But who knows, we might have something down the road that uses curses or has something to do with curses. Curse target avatar, choose 1. Their spells cost 1 more to cast on their next turn. They lose 2 life, or they have -3 power until your next turn. This is really cool. I love options on cards in TCG games. That options means power to me, like being able to choose different directions, depending on what's going on in the game. Having that versatility, that utility in the card is really cool. Now, this particular avatar with these options, the first option really isn't going to be useful very often. Tapping your avatar to make your opponent's spells cost 1 more. A 1-mana tax is not amazing. Maddening Bells is a 2-mana tax, and we don't even see that played very often. It's played usually in just extreme aggro decks. This is only a 1-mana tax. I think that tapping to cause your opponent to lose 2 life is just going to be better, like almost every time. I don't think that the first ability has a whole lot of usefulness in constructed or limited, to be honest. I think that the second ability is both good in constructed and limited. I think that the third ability can be useful in limited, depending on if we have another avatar that comes out with 3 power. Could be cool. But and in constructed, it's good against Battle Mage, good against Avatar of Earth. Could see it being useful there. But the ability that's going to be used most often is the second ability, lose 2 life. That is just a free Devil's Egg. Lose 2 life every round is the same thing as Devil's Egg, and you don't have to pay 3 mana or protect the Devil's Egg. So lose 2 life, really good, really very good in limited. I think that especially if you're playing this against Spellslinger, I mean, that's Spellslinger just has nothing going on. Meanwhile, you're tapping your avatar to make your opponent lose 2 life every turn. That's amazing. Definitely a bomb in limited. I think in constructed, it's not going to see as much play as people might think. What do you play this in? You're tapping your avatar to use the abilities, so you're not drawing sites, you're not playing sites, so you're not really playing like a top-heavy deck. You're playing more of an aggro deck, or maybe a low-to-the-ground burn deck, something like that. But at that point, like, wouldn't you rather just have Sorcerer? Play with mixes, play with cores. I think so. I think the lose 2 life is good. It could go into a control shell, maybe, like a ramp control shell, something like that. But then is it better than Seer? I don't really think so. I'd love to see what your thoughts are on this. But my estimation is the Witch is just not quite good enough for constructed play. We'll see how it develops, but in limited, definitely very good. I'm going to say mostly limited. We might see, we will see some decks with this in constructed. I'd be happy to brew around it too, but I don't think it's going to be too amazing. All right, moving on to the only magic spell that we have currently in Arthurian Legends. That is Mesmerism, and it's a whopper. 4 mana for 4, and it requires 4 water threshold. That's pretty steep, but it has a good payoff. Unique magic. Gain control of target nearby minion. Alright, so this is excellent for water. Water really needed something like this. Huge tempo play, huge tempo swing. Taking a minion, gaining a minion. Requiring 4 water is tough and limited. You would really have to be in almost a mono water deck. Mostly water and limited to really pull this off. One of the biggest hangups in limited for especially newer players or players who aren't very experienced in limited meaning drafted or sealed, one of the big missteps that players will make is crafting their atlas and not putting the right number of sites for each element in their atlas. So something like this, 4 water threshold, I could definitely see players just getting stuck with it in hand without having the 4 water. So it's really, in limited, you almost have to be mono water to play this. It's definitely a bomb in limited, but I see this being mostly constructed playable. It's going to be awesome in constructed. Can't wait to play with that card. Definitely a major boost to water. So moving on to minions now. The first minion we have here is Band of Thieves. 3 mana for 3 power, 2 air threshold with stealth. Pretty straightforward. It's not really going to see play in constructed, but it is good in limited. We're going to say strictly limited on this one. Phase Assassin and Constructed is just better, has Voidwog. There's other things you want to do for 3 mana and air, so I'm not seeing it in Constructed at all. Now in limited, 3 power for 3 mana is good. Without an ability, it's good. I always focus on 3 power, 3 mana, 3 power dudes. Even if they don't have ability, I pick them over a lot of other things. I'll usually grab a few removal spells first. If a pack doesn't have any removal or burn, or I'm already stacked on those, I'll focus on 3 mana, 3 power dudes. Sure, if there's a 4 power, 5 power dude in the pack that I can use, I'll take that. 3 plus power is really good. 2 power, not so great. So 3 mana, 3 power, stealth, awesome for limited. That's definitely a high pick. So moving on to Koi Nixie, 3 mana for 2 power, not a good rate. 2 water threshold, exceptional merfolk. Submerge. Once on your turn, Koi Nixie may force target nearby enemy to take a step towards her. Tap that enemy if it is untapped. It's really cool that you can tap an enemy right off the bat, including an opponent's avatar. That's fun. The submerge keyword is kind of useless here because Koinixie just doesn't do anything when she's underwater. You want to be on the surface so that you can target a nearby enemy. 2 power for 3 mana and water. You're probably not playing ramp. It's just not playable. I don't think it's playable in limited. I don't think it's playable constructed. I love the artwork. Beautiful artwork. I wish I could play it, but probably neither for me. It's just too expensive for its power, and 2 power is just notoriously not very good in either limited or constructed. So moving on to, we have Harassing Ruffians. Harassing Ruffians is 3 mana for 3 power, so already we have a good rate on Harassing Ruffians, and it has an ability attached to it. So for limited, I'm going to say right off the bat, this is definitely playable in limited, but it is just strictly worse than stealth. For constructed, I don't see this being played at all. It says units attacked by Harassing Ruffians can't be defended. It's ordinary mortals. It's not. Stealth is just strictly better. 3 mana for 3. It's just not good enough constructed. I'm going to say strictly limited on this guy. I'd be happy to play this in limited. Like I said, just a vanilla body, 3 mana for 3 power, totally fine. So moving on to the next minion. I love this minion. Definitely, probably going to be the best ordinary minion in the entire set. Hider Sprites. 2 mana, 1 air threshold, 2 power, ordinary fairies. Genesis, name a spell. Spells with that name can't be cast until your next turn. This is amazing. It's amazing in the Death Speaker mirror match when you're afraid that your opponent's going to play their Nimbus Gen on you and you're about to lose. You pop a Hider Sprites, name Nimbus Gen, now it bought you another turn. Maybe it goes to your cemetery, you can play it again the next turn. It's ordinary. You can pull it up with common sense. It's great. Think about it with Swiven Scout. Swiven Scout reveals your opponent's hand. Hider Sprites can then name cards in your opponent's hand so that they can't cast them. You can essentially make them skip a turn if you know they only have 1 4-mana spell coming up on their 4th turn. They're going to play their 4th mana, and all they have is that spell. Like, you just name that spell, and now they have to skip the turn because they can't play their spell. That's awesome. Hider Sprites are going to see a lot of play in constructed. In limited, not so much. 2 mana for 2 power, and you don't know what your opponent's playing. I don't see it being played in limited at all. Strictly constructed for me. Moving on to Keening Banshee. 4 mana, 2 air threshold, 3 power, an ordinary spirit. Interesting. We definitely want more spirits so that we can use our evil presence in the spirits deck. I want to play spirits deck. I think it's fun. But this one, 4 mana for 3 power, that's not a good rate. I don't like it, especially when we're working with already 3 mana for 4 power minions in beta. So it is ordinary, but the ability says may be cast for 0 if an allied mortal died this turn. That's just not very good. You're throwing away a mortal, so you can cast this for 0. Maybe you're playing a sorcerer, you're piling up cards in your hand, and you're throwing all these minions out. Could be useful sometimes. I think you can do a lot better things with 4 mana. I'm thinking, like, maybe if you have werewolf, you have a soldier, you sack the soldier, you get the werewolf out, and then you play Keening Banshee on the same turn. It would have to be turn 2 though. And even then, like, it requires 2 air threshold, so you can't even do that unless you also have like an amethyst core on turn 1. It's just the 2 air threshold. I think that hurts it quite a bit. Like, that makes it just not good at all in constructed. In limited, 4 mana for 3 power is not a good rate. There are a lot of 3 mana for 3 power dudes in beta. There's probably going to be 3 mana for 3 power in Arthurian Legends. So I hate to say it, but this one for me is probably neither. I don't think I'd play it in either constructed or limited, unfortunately. It's the spirit. The fact that it's a spirit may make a difference in constructed, but I'm not seeing it at all. Moving on to Queen Guinevere. 4 mana, 1 of each threshold, fire, earth, air, water, 1 power, only 1 power. But once on your turn, Queen Guinevere may untap target allied minion. This is a unique, so it's not a build around card. It's not going to show up very often in your constructed games. It could be useful. Definitely goes into the night deck. If there's a night deck, this goes into it. This with Excalibur, it would become a 5 power minion that's immune to damage. Really cool, but Excalibur is unique as well. So most likely it's just not going to line up properly. So Queen Guinevere, I'm not a fan really. Being able to untap a minion so that it can attack again is really cool. We don't really have a lot of tap effects on minions right now. Pudge Butcher with this is awesome. But honestly, a lot of times this card will show up probably and just at the wrong time. If you don't have another minion out, it's going to be useless. So I don't think it's a very good card in general for Constructed. I don't think it's playable at all in Limited. There's just nothing you want to do with this in Limited, and it costs 1 of each threshold. So I think it's barely going to be played in Constructed. But if it's played anywhere, it will be in the Knight's deck with the round table. I'm sure it's a Dame, so I think it counts to draw a card. I could be wrong about that, but I believe it is. Moving on to Questing Beast. 5 mana, 2 water threshold, 5 power. Unique Beast. Lethal. Stealth. At the end of your turn, Questing Beast may take a step. I was really high on this card when I first saw it. I really loved the artwork. 5 mana is a lot for water. 5 mana, we have Ennui Undine, we have Shark, we have Atlantean Fate. There's probably more 5 mana things coming out in Arthurian Legends. It's tough to slot this in. I think that in Limited, this is a bomb. I think in Constructed, we're not going to see it in every water deck. Lethal is not really that important at 5 power. It might be important against Knights, but most of the time Lethal is just not going to matter since it already has 5 power. Stealth is really cool. You're guaranteeing 5 damage strike. That alone, I think, could force it into water decks. And the fact that on something like Ennui Undine is very easy to deal with like an Earthquake or a Silence, something like that makes it a 1 power unit minion all of a sudden. So I think yes, in Constructed, Questing Beast is definitely it's better than Ennui in some situations. Ennui can be huge though. So and Ennui is a spirit too. This is a beast. There is another minion later that it cares about beasts. I don't think it's in the same colors though, the same elements. We'll see what happens with Questing Beast. I'm not as high on it as I thought I would be after thinking about it more. This is going to be mostly Limited for me. I think it might see some Constructed play, or will see some Constructed play, but definitely Limited is where it really, really shines. Moving on to Sealy Court. 6 mana, 2 water threshold, 5 power, Fairy Elite. So we have another fairy. There's probably going to be a fairy deck. At the start of your turn, players draw a spell for each fairy in the realm. So this really depends. How many ordinary fairies are we going to have? How many exceptional fairies are we going to have? How many good fairies, playable fairies in Constructed are we going to have? I think in Limited, it's strong no matter what. It's 6 mana for 5 power. It's an okay rate. If you're playing with Spellslinger, you just want to draw cards. Even if you're giving your opponent extra card draw, I think that that's fine. So definitely a good card to play in Limited. Definitely a first pick in Limited, especially if you can then focus on getting some more fairies for the deck. This could be really cool. It gives both players a card draw if you didn't pick up on that. In Constructed, depends. How good is the fairy deck going to be? I think in Constructed, if there's a fairy deck, then the question is, like, what kind of a deck is it? Is it an aggro deck? And in that case, 6 mana is pretty steep. Does this go into a more mid-rangey control water shell? And then are you playing all of these fairies? Like some of these fairies that we're going to be going over. I'm not so sure it's going to find a place in Constructed as easily. I'm excited to see the rest of the set, but for right now, I'm going to say mostly Limited on Sealy Court without more information. Sherwood Huntress, 2 mana, 1 air, 2 power, ranged. Unfortunately, this is a probably neither for me. 2 power is not good in Limited, 2 power is not good in Constructed. Ranged is just not a good enough upside to make it worth it. Beautiful artwork though, but I'm not going to be playing that card ever. I don't think. Siege Giant, 4 mana, 2 fire threshold, 4 power. An exceptional giant. Takes aim. Once on your turn, Siege Giant may throw a weaker ally here through the air to a nearby location. So for Limited, yes, 4 mana, 4 power. That's what we want to see. That's a good rate. 4 power is strong, and like I said, anything 3 or more power and limited is going to be strong. They're more difficult to deal with, especially at 4 power. Like things like Fire Bolts and Lightning Bolt won't hit it. We don't know what kind of removal is going to be in Arthurian Legends yet, but I think it's going to be a fine pick, maybe a second, third pick in limited easily. I would probably choose removal over this though early on. If I already had some removal, then we can grab this. Definitely over a 3 power, 3 mana guy. In constructed, I don't see this seeing play at all. I don't think it does anything. What are you throwing with this? Maybe kobolds? Why? I just don't know what you do with this in constructed. It doesn't have enough uses. Maybe something will come out of Arthurian Legends that'll make it good, but for me, it is a strictly limited card. Moving on to Sir Galahad, 5 mana, 2 air threshold, 2 earth threshold, 3/6. So this is our first split power and toughness. We're going to say split attack and toughness because power really means both attack and toughness put together. So we do have split attack and toughness in the set. 3/6. That's a pretty big butt. 6 toughness for 5 mana. Pretty cool. 3 attack. I'd love for this to be 4 attack, especially since it doesn't come with a lance. It's a unique mortal. Sir Galahad strikes heal you. Nearby allies take no damage from demon spirits and undead. The second ability, nearby allies take no damage from demon spirits and undead, probably isn't going to be useful most of the time. There just aren't decks that are just only spirits, only undead, only demons. There is a spirit deck that is pretty decent, but it taking over the meta is probably not going to happen. And this is a unique mortal anyway, so it's not going to protect you all the time at any rate. 5 mana for 3 attack with the life gain with healing. I would almost rather just play Dapple Vampire. 5 mana for Dapple Vampire is 5 mana for 4 power with Airborne and strikes heal you. Yes, this has a pretty big booty. 6 toughness is a lot. It's a very defensive spell, but you're in Air Earth. I mean, Air Earth is Pound Town, man. You want to be getting after it. I don't see this seeing a whole lot of play, to be honest. It's just 2 air, 2 earth. That's a lot for only 3 attack with life gain. I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing this. It definitely goes into the night deck, though. We can't put it in strictly limited because it goes in the night deck. Into the night deck. But I'm going to say mostly limited because in limited, this is a pretty good card. In limited, 6, like the toughness isn't going to be hard to deal with. Being able to heal you too, that's pretty good. So moving on to Sir Lancelot. 6 mana, 2 fire threshold, 2 earth threshold for 4 attack, 6 toughness. So better rate than the last knight. It's a unique mortal. It comes in with a lance. So, okay, now we're talking about actually 5 attack, 6 toughness when it comes out and first strike. That's pretty decent. Definitely really good and limited. And constructed, it's okay. 6 mana is too steep to make it worth playing without the second ability. The second ability says the first time Sir Lancelot fights each turn, untap him. So, that is crazy. Being able to untap him and attack again after a fight, that is really, really good, especially if you're attacking their avatar. Say you put an overpower on this guy, and he has the lance, so now he's like a 7 power guy, attacking twice. Well, he'll lose the lance, so it becomes 6 power after that. But either way, like, beefing this guy up and then attacking twice, that's what makes this guy worth playing. He's going to be heavily played, I think, in the Fire Earth deck in Constructed. Obviously, he goes into the Night deck. He's a bomb in Limited. Being able to hand off the lance to another minion is just icing on the cake if you don't want to use it on Sir Lancelot because it is an artifact, the lances. So we're going to say mostly constructed, but it's great in both. So that's a win there. Moving on to Sir Peleus. 3 mana, 1 air, 2 water for 4 attack, 3 toughness. Very good rate there, very good. Submerge, unique mortal with Submerge. Moves freely between water locations. Easily playable in Limited in the Air Water deck. Easily playable in Constructed. Easily playable in the Night deck. I think because it's unique, I'm going to put it in mostly Constructed. I think it speaks for itself. Being able to cast it submerged, protected, and then the next turn pop up, move freely within the body of water, and then hop onto your opponent's side and attack for 4. That is good. I think this goes into a lot of any deck playing air water. I think would want to just slot this in. It's really cool. It may even like help you play with Sunken Treasures. Hopefully we get more cards in the Arthurian Legends that encourages play with Sunken Treasures. I love to play with those cards if we can. But yeah, limited, constructed, both very good. But it's unique, so probably won't see it often in limited. Another unique mortal here, Knight. Sir Percival, 4 mana, 1 air, 2 earth, for 4 attack, 5 toughness. So pretty decent rate, definitely acceptable and limited. It's okay for constructed. Let's see what its ability does. Genesis, an opponent chooses a site. When Sir Percival enters that site, draw a card, then reactivate his Genesis ability to force the opponent to choose a new site for him to quest to. This is really cool, really fun flavor. Like when he comes into play, your opponent chooses his quest destination. Now he has the quest there to find the treasure. Really cool, the treasure being card draw. So Genesis' opponent chooses a site. When Sir Percival enters that site, draw a card, and then reactivate his ability. Interesting note, like the opponent can choose the site that Sir Percival is on, and then Sir Percival would have to leave the site and then come back to that site to be able to draw the card, because he would have to re-enter it. Cool card. I think that being an Air Earth is perfect for this guy. Air has unit mobility. Earth has site mobility. So you can probably get him to the location that your opponent picks pretty easily. So I think this is a really good card in Constructed. I think it's a really good card in Limited. And it goes into the Night deck. But we're going to stay mostly Constructed because it is unique. Moving on to Sir Tristan. Another Knight here. 5 mana, 2 air, 1 earth, 1 water. Okay, so this is pretty steep for Threshold. But something we didn't mention before, I think that mixes are going to be a whole lot more popular in our Arthurian Legends, because with a mix, it really doesn't matter what mix you're using, as long as the spell that you cast after sacrificing the mix shares 1 threshold with that mix. Then you won't have to pay. It doesn't require any of the thresholds. So mixes completely obliterate all threshold requirements. So if you're wanting to play this with Mix Ignis, it only requires 1 fire threshold, 2 air, and then 1 water. If you sacrifice Mix Ignis, it just says the next fire spell you cast requires no threshold. So it completely just nullifies all threshold requirements for this card. Same for like Queen Guinevere, requires 1 of each threshold. You can sacrifice Mix Ignis and then pay 1 mana, and maybe you don't have anything. Maybe all you have is a desert out, and you can still play Queen Guinevere for 1 mana. It's like that is kind of crazy. That's what's going to push mixes up. Mixes may even overtake cores as the more commonly played ramp artifacts that people play with. We'll see what happens there. But anyway, back to Sir Tristan. 2 air, 1 fire, 1 water for 2 attack, 4 toughness. 5 mana. That is a terrible rate. This thing better have an awesome ability. I don't think it does, though. Once on your turn, Sir Tristan may tap target nearby minion. That enemy doesn't untap the next time it would. Okay, so it is a good ability. I'm not saying it's a bad ability. But if your opponent doesn't have any minions to tap, then it does nothing. It's 5 mana for 2 attack, 4 toughness. What are you doing with this card? If you don't have any strong minion to attack into your opponent, then you're tapping down a minion just so you can attack for 2, and you spent 5 mana to do this. I'm going to have to be made a believer on this one. I don't see it, especially with that steep threshold requirement, forcing you into air, fire, and water. I'm not seeing it. This card is probably going to see very, very little play in Constructed. It will go in the Knights deck, actually. It will definitely go in the Knights deck. You have Excalibur, you have Round Table, you have ways for this guy to get beefed up. And it's fun it'll definitely be beneficial to clear the way for attacks when you're loading up the realm, with a bunch of knights. But outside of the Knights deck, I don't see it being played. I see it seeing 0 limited play because of its steep threshold requirement. So we're going to put that in strictly constructed. Moving on to Sir Yvain. Sir Yvain, 2 earth, 2 water threshold requirement. It costs 5 mana for 3 attack, 4 power. Another bad raid here. Not liking it already for limited. We'll see what it comes into play with. Unique Mortal, Lance, Genesis, choose an allied beast. Sir Yvain and his beast companion have +2 power while adjacent to each other. Okay, now we're talking. This is pretty cool for constructed. It comes with a lance, like even in limited, like 5 mana for a 3/4 with a lance. So it comes in as a 4/4 first striker. That could be useful. It forces you into earth and water, though. Like, I definitely would not construct my deck around this. It's unique, and its ability isn't that good enough. You're in water and earth. How many beasts are we going to have in water and earth? We'll have to see when the set gets fully spoiled. Maybe there are a ton of ordinary beasts that would make this guy really powerful. He is good. Even if you only have a 2-power beast, you come into play. Now the 2-power beast is 4 power, and it comes in with a lance. So you give the beast a lance, and now it's attacking for 5 power. That is really good. So definitely you need to have some beasts to make him very, extremely useful and limited. I could see him, slotting into some decks here and there, but I wouldn't like... this would not force me into water, that's for sure. And constructed, easily in the Knights deck. I could see even a constructed build with beasts, playing with assorted animals, playing with Sir Yvain. Then when you play Sir Yvain and you have beasts out, he's kind of a bomb. So he becomes, a 5/6, and your beast gets +2 power as well. Definitely see him in constructed in certain decks. An interesting build around card, but we'll see. We'll have to see how prevalent he becomes. We're going to say mostly constructed because in limited, he's good, but the fact that he requires 2 water threshold, I don't really think he's going to force me into water. So moving on to Sugar Plum Pixies, 2 mana, 1 water, 2 power, exceptional fairy. So we got another fairy here. Definitely goes into the fairy deck if there is one in constructed. Airborne, at the end of your turn, untap another nearby ally. That ability is just not that great. We have it already on another minion in beta. I don't think that ability matters a whole lot. We're going to say strictly constructed for this guy because it's 2 power for 2. That's just not good enough, especially in a water deck. You have to have more beef. 2 power for 2 is not good. It's not very good in the constructed either. You might not even see play there. But the fact that he's a fairy means he could probably go into a fairy deck. Moving on to a very interesting card here that a lot of people missed, I think. It's a horse. This was kind of hidden in a sorcery post on their website. I deleted the card that was in front of it. It was like a knight. It was one of the knights. And then I put in my own guesses at what the mana cost might be here and what the abilities might be. So a couple things to note here. The flavor text here at the bottom of the card, the flavor text at the bottom of the card you can see is pushed down to the bottom of the text box. So usually when that happens, there is an ability in the text box. Another thing to note is there's a lot of space there on the right side of that box. So we can expect an ability here that is short. So maybe a keyword, maybe something like movement plus X, charge, something like that. And then 2 or 3 mana since it has 2 power. It is a beast. That's interesting. I would say that at 3 mana, no matter what the ability is, it's probably not good enough to play in limited or in constructed at 2 power. 3 mana, 2 power, movement, charge. I don't think it's playable in constructed. In limited, movement, no. Charge, maybe. 3 mana for 2 power, charge, maybe. I would pick a lot of things over this though. 3 mana for 3 power, vanilla, I would pick over this, honestly. So let's ignore it at 3 mana. Let's just assume that it's 2 mana. So that way we can at least have high expectations for it. So 2 mana for 2 power with charge, that is definitely playable in constructed and playable in limited. I would say if it is an ordinary 2 mana for 2, we can't see the rarity. Ordinary 2 mana for 2 with charge in constructed, Oh yeah, like I think in a maybe like a red deck wins type of shell, this would be pretty good. Getting in guaranteed 2 damage, or even in limited when you're talking about just playing it with charge, if it has charge, and then hitting an enemy for 2 damage, and then playing a desert to kill the enemy minion, or combining it with some other spell like Firebolt or something like that. Definitely has uses at 2 mana. 2 power, and if it had charge, 2 mana, 2 power movement. No, I would not play it. I think the only time this is playable is if it's 2 mana. The only way it would be playable is 2 mana for 2 power, and it has charge. And then I would say it's both playable in constructed and limited. And I would say that mostly constructed because 2 power is just not great in limited. There are a lot of other things that I would pick over it. Like I said, 3 power, 3. For 3 mana is still better than 2 power, 2 mana charge. Moving on to Weightless Squire. 3 mana, 1 air, 1 power. Ooh, that is not good. Ordinary Mortal, Fairy. So an Ordinary Mortal carried by Fairy Optimism. So it is a fairy. If you're trying to play fairies in limited, you would definitely want to grab this because there probably aren't that many fairies, especially at the ordinary rarity. It does enter with airborne, with a lance, and it has airborne. Airborne doesn't really matter a whole lot on a 1 power guy. Like I'm not really caring about that. Most likely, I'm just going to chump block. Airborne would help me chump block, I guess. It comes with a lance. That's the most important part here. You can hand something a lance, give it first strike and +1 power. But to be honest, at 3 mana, I would just rather have a 3 power, 3 mana vanilla guy. I mean, it's just going to be better. Unfortunately, Weightless Squire is just probably not going to see any limited play unless you're going to try and slot it into a fairy deck. I would not pick this card except in the most specific circumstances, going with a fairy deck. Only requiring 1 air is good. At least it doesn't require 2 air. But I'm going to say that this is, man, I don't even want to put it in constructed, to be honest. I'm not even sure it would go into a fairy deck in constructed. 3 mana for 1 power with a lance, and that's it. I personally would have to see more cards before I put it in constructed. I'm thinking this is a probably neither card. It's just not doing it for me. Like I said, we may get more stuff in constructed that makes it useful. But it's just not powerful enough, in my opinion. Wyvern, 6 mana, 2 earth, 5 power, airborne. Very simple. It is a beast. It's exceptional. Not really playable in constructed. Too expensive for what you get. In limited, it's great though. Strictly limited, 5 power and limited is good. 6 mana is a little steep, but if you're playing with Spellslinger, you're not drawing a lot of cards, you have extra mana, you're going to get this out, and it's going to be tough to deal with. Moving on to sites. We have our very first site here, and it is Camelot. Unique minions cost 1 less to cast to nearby sites. Very interesting. It doesn't provide any threshold, though. I think that might be the killer here. So I want to think about it in constructed. I want to play it in the Knights deck, but honestly, not providing threshold and the Knights having all these threshold requirements, I'm not so sure this is easy to play in that deck. And in limited, I probably don't want this in limited either. In limited, this card is just not going to do anything, even in sealed. In a sealed environment, even when you get 3 unique minions in sealed, maybe you get 4. Is this worth it? No, not with without the threshold provision. It's just gonna probably be a pain more than it helps you. Now in constructed outside of the Knight deck, I could see this performing in some deck that plays with a lot of unique minions that maybe is mono or two color. Probably not monocolored decks. It's hard to fill a monocolored deck with unique minions. In a 2-color deck with a lot of unique minions, yeah, maybe Camelot could see some love. It's definitely strictly constructed, though, for me. Hamlet. This is very blurry. This is the best I could do with this card. Hamlet, I believe it is an ordinary site. Ordinary minions cost 1 less to cast to this site. Okay, it doesn't provide any threshold. Again, that's a problem for Constructed. Especially in Constructed, you want to play with exceptional minions too. Even if you're playing an aggro shell, probably the majority of your deck is not ordinary minions. Maybe you have up to, at most, 15, 16 ordinary minions at most, and that's very rare. So I'm not really sure this has a very good place in Constructed where you want to be throwing out your minions quickly. You want to hit your threshold on time. I'm not really seeing it there. I think that this card shines in Limited. I think that Limited, you're going to have a lot of ordinary minions. Being able to play those ordinary minions to this site for cheap, that's pretty good. And I think that in Constructed, you're usually in a 2-color deck. That's totally fine to play with a card that doesn't provide a threshold if you don't have like a lot of knights, a lot of cards that require multiple threshold. For me, I'm going to say that this is going to be strictly Limited for now. I can't think of a deck that wants it in Constructed. It's just not. It's not quite there. There are too many good exceptional minions in Constructed to exclude just to fill up your deck with ordinary minions. Maybe in Death Speaker. Death Speaker plays with a lot of ordinary minions. I would say that this probably has it's going to see a lot of usefulness in Death Speaker. Yeah, actually, let's move that to mostly Limited. Thinking about it in Death Speaker, that could be pretty good. Replaying, if you have a deck full of Land Surveyors, Apprentice Wizards, Hider Sprites, replaying those to Hamlet for 1 less mana from your cemetery, and you don't care where Hamlet is at that point because you're just flashing it back for the Genesis effect. That could be pretty good. You'll be playing a lot of ordinary minions in Death Speaker, so maybe like a 2-color Death Speaker build that doesn't care that this doesn't have threshold. Yeah, I can see that. So moving on to Perilous Bridge. This is an elite site, and it provides air threshold. Units can't traverse this site's top border on the ground. If this ability seems familiar to you, it's because it is. It is the same ability that's on Great Wall. Great Wall doesn't even see any play, really, at this time. But Great Wall doesn't provide threshold. Perilous Bridge does. You can fly over this bridge. I'm assuming you can use Avatar of Air to even fly ground units over the bridge. So I think if this goes anywhere, it would be in Constructed in a like an Avatar of Air build with a lot of airborne units. I could see it there to help defend while also, being able to launch attacks. In Limited, I don't think this has any usefulness. You would have to draft or open in your sealed pool quite a few airborne minions to make this worth it. Yes, it does keep your enemies from pushing in to whatever site or wherever you're putting this Perilous Bridge. So I could see in Limited, one thing we didn't mention, in Limited, we're not going to have towers, villages, deserts, or rivers anymore given to us for free. We'll have to draft those or open those in our sealed pool. So the sites that we're going to have are just basic sites, basic fire, basic water. All they do is provide threshold, and they have no ability. So if it's between this and a basic air site, you'll probably play this. It blocks your own minions from advancing, so you'll probably play it off to the side just to protect that zone, that region, so that you only have to focus on this other region. So definitely I see it seeing play in Limited, but it's not going to be a first pick, second pick, third pick. It'll be low on the list here. I'm going to say mostly Constructed in an airborne shell, probably with Avatar of Air. Moving on to Poisoned Well. This is an exceptional site. With Genesis, enemy avatars lose 1 life for each nearby site they control. In Limited, again, this provides a fire threshold. It's going to be better than a blank site that provides fire and that only provides fire threshold and doesn't do anything. So in Limited, this is great. In Constructed, I don't see it. At first, it sounds good, maybe in an aggro build, but I would rather just have deserts. Using the desert to destroy opposing 1-power minions that can chump block so that you can get in and deal more damage, or getting in that extra point of damage on that Autumn Unicorn so that then you can hit it with a Firebolt. That is just too valuable in Constructed. So I don't think this site belongs in Constructed at all. I think it is a strictly limited site. Moving on to Tintagel. So Tintagel is a unique site that provides earth, air, and water threshold. So interesting thing about Tintagel, if you're familiar with the lore, this is actually the place where King Arthur was conceived. If I remember correctly, Merlin disguises King Arthur as... Merlin disguises Uther Pendragon as the Duke of Cornwall, and then he goes into the castle, meets up with the lady of the castle, has a little fun, and then spawns King Arthur. So this will be pretty fun to play with. I can't wait to summon King Arthur to Tintagel just to spark some conversation. But back to the card. Tintagel only provides mana and threshold while in your back row. That is tough. I really dislike that downside. When I'm playing Enchantress, like the first thing I think about when I see these 3-color sites, I'm sure this is going to be a cycle. I'm sure we'll see other sites with different elements attached to them. I would love to play it in Enchantress, especially since we're going up to 50 card spellbook and 30 card atlas. But my problem is, like, sometimes I want to create a 2x2 grid for my Enchantress so I can animate auras on it. And if I draw this card, one of these sites, now I can't place it forward to finish the grid. I have to like save these back row slots. It makes it a little bit inconvenient when I'm playing out sites, or maybe if I want to advance my site to close in a gap and I draw this card. If I play it there, it's just going to be blank now. I really wish that it would still provide mana and just, lose the threshold when playing forward, but unfortunately it loses both. And then now Earthquake is already powerful. Atlas Wanderers is really good. The Earthquake and Atlas Wanderers and any other cards that might move around sites that come out in Arthurian Legends, being able to push this side away from your back row and blanking it, it's just worse than Color Out of Space. Color Out of Space can at least be played in different regions around the board, and it gives you all 4 colors, and they're both unique. So I don't know. This is a struggle for me. Like I really want to play these sites. I mean, we're going to have to play these sites to get mana fixing in 30 card atlases. So it's definitely going to see a lot of play in Constructed. I think it's better in Limited because it can really fix your Atlas, your threshold requirements for casting these Knights. I do think it's better in Limited. Where will it see the most play? It's unique, but it is a cycle. I mean, we could probably see these mostly in Limited. And honestly, like, there aren't like a ton of 3-color and 4-color decks in Constructed. And like I said, it could be a hindrance depending on what the way you build the deck and what you're going for. So I don't know. This is tough. I have to put it in mostly Constructed because it's unique. Definitely something like Death Speaker will want these sites as well. So it's good. It's just I'm really sad about the downside. So moving on to a much, much better site, Valley of Delight. And it's elite. We'll be able to play 2 of these in our deck. Genesis, choose one. Air, earth, fire, water. This site provides that permanently. So it's a beautiful site. I can't wait to see this in foil. It's going to be like an auto include in so many decks. So like 2-color decks, 3-color decks, man, it's going to be popping up everywhere. It's probably going to be the most played site from the set. It's excellent and limited, great for mana threshold fixing, amazing in Constructed. We're going to see it in Constructed everywhere. I've got to put it in mostly Constructed because it is elite and it's going to be everywhere. But honestly, like any deck, like even in limited, you would be hard prep. Like you could easily first pick this over a lot of things because it's that good. Being able to fix your mana or your threshold. So awesome site there. Super excited for that one. Moving on to our very last card here. Our last site is Wizard's Den. It is an elite site, but it does not provide any threshold. Genesis, draw a spell, discard a spell when this site is first attacked successfully. This is an awesome site. It doesn't provide threshold, so that makes deck building a little tough around it. But any 2-color deck would be hard-pressed not to try to include this in. As a colorless site, it fights over its slot with things like Free City, Bottomless Pit, Geistwood. There are a lot of colorless sites that are good, but we're going up to 30 Atlas, a 30 size Atlas, 30 card Atlas. So I think that this is going to see a whole lot of play in Constructed. I think in Limited without Sorcerer, it's going to see a whole lot of play. If this card pops up, getting an extra card in Limited is going to be amazing. But it's Elite. I'm going to put it in mostly Constructed because we're going to see it a lot more in Constructed, I think, than we'll see it in Limited, because it's just not going to pop up very often. So that is it. That is all the Arthurian Legends spoilers we have so far. I'd love to hear what you guys think about my analysis here. Leave some comments in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts. Are there some of these cards that you would have put in different rows? What are you planning on doing with some of these cards in Constructed? Are you excited for Sealed? Are you excited for Draft? If you didn't know, Eric's Curiosa is going to be live streaming Sealed event coverage, Sealed deck coverage, starting in Spellslinger and continuing on, and that'll be early in the morning, Saturday, October 5th, and then continuing on in the United States, in Denton, Texas, starting at 2 p.m. I am going to be guest commentating in Texas live. We're going to be interviewing players. We're going to be talking about all the cards that pop up in gameplay. We're going to be talking about Arthurian Legends in between rounds, during rounds. We're going to be having a lot of fun, and I hope you guys tune in for that. You should come check it out. Again, that'll be October 5th, Saturday at 2 p.m. And also, if you happen to live in the Colorado area or you're passing through Colorado, my store, Games Ahoy, is going to be running Arthurian Legends events during the weekend of release. So it's up for it really depends on when we get our product, which days we hold events, but definitely on Sunday, October 6th, that night we'll be having an event at 7 p.m. But if you're in the area, stop by, check us out. If you're on Discord, if you haven't joined the official Sorcery Discord yet, do so. You can go to sorcerytcg.com. There's a link to the Discord there. Join Discord. My name is Zalem on Discord. Hit me up if you want to get a game in. Can't wait to see you on Saturday, October 5th. So we'll see you guys next time.